We might eventually get this right.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Tina Arrington.
And I'm Darnell Moore.
And we are
Edit.
I am the English portion of our blended class.
And I'm the Digital Input Technologies portion of our class.
And we are at the Gereau Center
in Rocky Mount, Virginia.
Our project is Peace and Still. Peace meaning law enforcement.
And still as in a moonshine still.
The project was centered around students researching local history. We live in a county known as the moonshine capital of the world. Therefore, it is a large part of our heritage. Students were asked to research and interview family and community members to uncover personal connections.
Students then wrote narratives from the perspective of a character from the area, demonstrating an understanding of Prohibition and the 1920s. Groups created narratives based on individual writing and podcasts, oral interpretations of these narratives. Along with the narratives was a barn quilt square with QR codes displayed in public spaces.
We began with the driving question: how can we be historically accurate storytellers? Sharing the details of people and events in our community long ago while looking at the connections to the current events and examining the role of criminal justice as it relates to those events.
We then look at the Virginia Standards of Learning.
Yes, they really are called SOLs.
And with those SOLs and the 8th grade pacing guide, we match them up so that the natural elements to target and stay on track. We targeted namely 8.1, 8.4, 8.5.
8.8, 8.9, yes, it just kept growing and growing. We had interviewing, collaboration, research, summarizing, reading fiction and nonfiction, writing, revising, audience, tone, grammar, imagery, you name it, it's in this project.
The project launch started with a mini museum walk of artifacts from the basement of both teachers and students.
And even a basement tour on video from one of our facilitators. We attempted to identify items ranging from a 1900s cherry putting machine to a 1960s hairdryer. Several students brought in items such as pocket watches and antique documents. We even had a few pieces of an old still.
We read a short story entitled Everyday Use by Alice Walker.
This led to a discussion of where the line is between preserving history and living life. The students then began to research the 1920s. 14 groups were assigned a different aspect of the decade and contributed to a class hyperdoc, which was then shared with the rest of the 8th grade when they began reading the novel to give them some background.
Now, the novel we read was Black Duck by Janet Taylor Lyle. It is a historical fiction about a ship of the same name that was used to run rum in Rhode Island during the time. There are real news articles, there are first-hand accounts that we use to enhance student learning. The students fell in love with the fact that one of the guys on the ship got his finger shot off.
Pretty gross. In the preparation phase, we partnered with the Blue Ridge Institute, a local museum attached to Ferrum College.
Along with the speakers from the Blue Ridge Institute, we brought in real-life bootleggers.
One who is a published author and currently legal.
And the local group of barn quilt artists, allowing the students to make real-life connections.
All in all, we took a deep dive into the world of fast cars, guns, midnight drop-offs, backwoods hideouts, conflicts with law enforcement, dead guys, local rumor mills, and ordinary people getting in over their heads.
Yeah. All this was sparked by the circumstances within our county around the 18th Amendment, the Prohibition Act of 1918. Phase 2 was the execution phase. It was time to start recording and building, yes, with wood and paint.
And more paint on everything, including the carpet, but we didn't get fired yet.
We're still here.
During the execution phase, students took on the role of historians and storytellers. Their first assignment was to individually interview someone about the past history of the county and report back to the class about what they learned.
These interviews sparked the plot for their group's historical narrative. These interviews, plus a little local research, helped them create characters and an event from the moonshining era. This narrative was then recorded as a podcast with a focus on tone, figurative language, and description.
As some students worked on recording the audio, others were busy sketching out the design to symbolically link their narrative to their barn quilt. They had to be able to make the metaphoric connection between the two pieces of this project. The design had to be sketched out on their wood, put on evenly. Of course, the wood had to be sanded and primed. They had to then carefully paint that design onto their plywood.
Finally, the podcast was embedded in a QR code, so it could be scanned by anybody who saw the artwork out in the community. The QR code was attached to the barn quilts before they were posted in front of the businesses. And these businesses were between the Gereau Center here and the BRI on a historic stretch of highway called the Crooked Road. Our quilted trail is called the Quilted Road, and it connects the local idea of the Crooked Road and the community's already existing barn quilt trail.
In the end, this project exceeded our time frame and our expectations. However, it was a success for our students and our community. The local businesses came out for a gallery walk at the local library to choose the quilt they wanted to display. This created a strong bond between our New Tech students and the 20-plus businesses in the area. 2 of those businesses actually donated materials and then posted a quilt. The high school students built 7-foot letters that spell out love to be displayed in town.
And the town of Rocky Mount actually moved these letters in front of our school for an event planned by the Virginia Department of Tourism. They used our project to launch a new slogan subcategory that Virginia is for moonshine lovers. Our students' barn quilts were the draw for this kickoff event, and several of our students were involved in the planning, the execution, and even gave large portions of the speeches.
It was a great way to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the ratification of this act. The students are now able to drive through town and see their work on display. Having the local, state, and family connections to such a large piece of our heritage really engaged the students and encouraged them to explore their own backyards.